everyone, thanks for tuning into today's video. I'm going to do something a bit different today for a weekday video. Normally the seasonal videos I do on a Sunday, but I've got a new model to look at. This has been brought to my attention by Sam on Twitter. He tweeted me yesterday with a link to this model. I wasn't sure what model it was, but I did a bit of digging around. Eventually I found out that it is the model from NASA. NASA have their own experimental seasonal weather model, and we have got a prediction here from NASA for the winter. So we'll have a look at all the charts in a moment, see what NASA's model is predicting for the winter. But before I get on that, I just want to mention the advertising. There's video ads on my page at gazwebbiz.com. Just hit play on the video ad, you don't have to do anything else, just hit play on the video ad that's sitting just above this video here on my homepage at gazwebbiz.com, and you'll be supporting gazwebbiz.com at the same time. Thanks very much for doing that. So this forecast was generated by NASA's model in October, so there'll be another one turning up at some point through November. So just going to very quickly recap what the model was showing for October, because it was quite good actually. The temperature forecast from NASA's model in October for the United Kingdom was going for a warmer than average month. There's the British Isles just there on the far right of the screen. You're looking at it as it usually is on these global sort of charts. In those yellow colours, that is temperatures above average. For October, the prediction was a warmer than average month from NASA's model. And in terms of the precipitation, again, very good, because again, we're in those yellow colours, and that's above average precipitation. So there we go, it was going for a warmer and wetter than average October. Now, that's very good. There weren't many models, I can assure you, that were predicting the combination that we got for October, warmer and wetter than average. Most of the models were going for a drier than average month, quite a warm month. In fact, it always looked like quite a warmish month, but most of the models were going for a drier than average month. So pretty good performance that from the forecast that was generated by NASA's model in October, for the month of October. And that does sort of give us a bit of confidence that this is a fairly good model. We should be taking its predictions quite seriously. Of course, it's experimental, so don't run away with the idea that it's got everything locked down months in advance. But certainly for October, the forecast it generated in October for October was pretty good. So let's go on, have a look at the monthly forecast for the coming few months. This is the temperature forecast from NASA's model for November, and it's going for a nearer average month actually. We're just bringing the temperatures down a little bit there compared to October. Still a bit above average, maybe 0.5 of a degree, half of a degree above average perhaps, but certainly it's closer to the average than October, and I think that's going to be a pretty good prediction actually. I don't think we're going to see the very warm sort of temperatures this November that we had in October. For December, again, it's showing near normal temperatures there across many parts of the country and Western Europe as well. Maybe just again on the mild side or the positive side of the average, but basically we've got near normal temperatures going on there. Notice through eastern parts of Europe it's going for a very cold month. The blue colours are appearing across eastern Europe in December, so that's where the cold is likely to be. Going through to the next monthly period, which takes us through to January, then things are starting to get interesting because it's turning cooler. We're still close to average, but just a little bit of the blue beginning to appear there across the country. So we're shifting from the positive side of average in January to the negative side of average in January. And notice that for many central parts of Europe, we have got cold appearing. It's turning colder than average through much of Germany, Eastern Europe, and southern parts of Scandinavia as well. So signs that things start to switch a bit as we get in towards January on NASA's model. And then as we move through into February, well then we're turning properly cold then. We're in those blue colours across the country and for Ireland as well in February. Most of continental Europe is in the blue colours as well. So that's indicating a cold February there for many parts of Europe. It's going to be a cold month if that's right. And also many parts of eastern and northeastern America having a very cold month in February as well. And that just goes on then into March. It's indicating a cold March there, NASA's model for the British Isles. Of course, that's a very long way off, but it is indicating a cold month again for March. Of course, this year we had a very cold March. This is right, we're seeing a repeat performance with a very cold month again expected in March. And again, much of America is locked in the freezer, so that's sort of the idea. But from January, things start getting progressively colder and colder, and certainly a very cold February and March being indicated there. The total winter prediction in terms of temperatures for December, January, February, the seasonal prediction, look at this, it is going for a colder than average winter there. Not desperately cold, but we're certainly on the colder side. Anomalies coming out anything from around average to 0.5 below average. Most of Europe colder than average as well, particularly Central and Northern Europe, as is most of Eastern America. But again, much of that is down to February. Actually, February is potentially a very cold month on this model. And the switch, though, does happen, or it appears that the switch happens as we go through January. Why is it going for this? I think I've been able to ascertain the reason, and it's the reason that many of the seasonal models that are going for a cold winter are doing it. It's because of El Nino. This is the sea surface temperature anomaly forecast for November. Again, this was generated in October, as were all of these charts, so there will be another update coming along later this month. And there's the equatorial Pacific, that's the ENSO region for November. Not much going on across the equatorial Pacific actually through that ENSO region in November. Just very slight warming through this central part, but no real sign of anything turning particularly warm. But as we go through to the forecast for February, look what's happened. Modoco El Nino has formed here through central and western parts of the equatorial Pacific. Warmer water has risen up. It's cooler though off towards the coast of Peru. So we've got the cooler waters there off towards the eastern side of the equatorial Pacific. It's warmer in central and western parts of the equatorial Pacific. That warm water is rising up. It's probably not the threshold for an El Nino, but it doesn't have to be. If it's warmer in central and western parts of the equatorial Pacific as opposed to eastern parts of the equatorial Pacific, this Peruvian coast, if it's cooler there and warmer in central western areas, then that very often locks America in particular into a colder than average winter. And sometimes if the Atlantic pattern is just right, it can also lock the British Isles into a cold and average winter. This is what happened in 2009, 2010. Of course, that was a proper El Nino and a strong El Nino as well, but it was warmer in central western parts of the Pacific as opposed to that Peruvian coast. And we're seeing the same sort of idea from this model, from NASA's model, for this coming winter. But the difference is that it isn't the kind of very strong El Nino that we had in winter 09-10. But it doesn't have to be. So NASA is definitely going for a colder than average winter for the British Isles and for much of Europe, and for northern and eastern parts of the United States as well. Now, as I said, this forecast was generated in October, so I'll be keeping an eye on it through November. Well, there'll be another update at some point through November, I'm quite sure. Have another look at it then, probably with all the other seasonal models as well. But very interesting. I didn't know that NASA did a seasonal model. They do say on their page, the caveat as always, that it's an experimental model, so don't go running away with the idea that it's definitely going to be colder than average winter. But it looks a pretty good model, and I will be keeping an eye on it, going for a cold and average winter. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.